It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday. Just me, my wife, and some time to unwind by the pool at our own house. No drama, no noise, just peace. But of course, peace never lasts long when you've got a Karen living down the street. This time, though, it wasn't her who started the trouble. It was her teenage daughter, spoiled, entitled, and clearly used to getting her way. She marched right into our backyard, stood at the edge of our private pool like she owned the place, and told my wife, to get out of her own water. No hi, no explanation, just pure attitude. Now, my wife isn't someone who likes confrontation. She's kind, respectful, and believes in giving people the benefit of the doubt. But even she was stunned, speechless. I was inside the house, when it happened, just about to bring out some drinks when I heard the shouting. What I walked into next honestly made my blood boil. There she was, this teenage girl standing over my wife, barking orders like a mini dictator. And standing behind her, arms crossed with that classic Karen glare, was her mother, acting like we were the ones trespassing. They had no idea who they were talking to, no clue I was the actual homeowner, and definitely no clue that I've been the chief of police for over a decade. I don't use that title to throw power around, but sometimes situations just demand a little authority. Still, instead of blowing up right away, I decided to stay calm and listen, to see just how far they were willing to go. What happened next took this whole neighborhood feud to a level I never saw coming. And trust me, it didn't end with just a simple apology. You're not going to believe what she said when she realized who I really was. So there I was, standing just a few feet from my wife, trying to process what I was seeing. The spoiled daughter was still pointing her finger and raising her voice, now demanding my wife move out of the way because she and her friends wanted to use the pool before it got too sunny. And Karen? She was just standing there like a proud coach, nodding along, clearly encouraging this behavior. I didn't say a word right away. I just looked at them, really looked, wondering how they thought this was okay. Our home sits at the end of a cul-de-sac surrounded by a row of neatly trimmed hedges and a gate that stays locked unless we open it. So how did they even get in? That question stuck in my head as the daughter continued her entitled rant, throwing in phrases like, "We have more important things to do than wait around," and "This pool looks better for our party anyway." It was unreal. I gently placed the tray I was holding on the patio table and walked up beside my wife. She looked at me with this mix of frustration and disbelief. And still, neither Karen nor her daughter seemed to catch on. I wasn't in uniform, just wearing shorts and a t-shirt like anyone else on a day off. They clearly assumed we were guests or renters or something else that made them think they had the upper hand. That's when Karen finally spoke. She stepped forward, raised her voice a notch, and said, "This neighborhood has certain standards, and people like you should know their place." That's the moment I knew. This wasn't just about the pool. This ran deeper. There was something about our presence here that bothered her. But she still had no idea who I was, or what I was about to do next. I looked Karen dead in the eye, still saying nothing, because I wanted to see just how far she'd go. And wow, she didn't hold back. She launched into some long-winded rant about how new people were moving into the neighborhood and lowering the standard. She kept using vague language, but we knew exactly what she meant. It wasn't just about the pool anymore. It was about us, the way she saw us, and her daughter. She just stood there smirking like this was all some kind of game. My wife, bless her heart, finally spoke up and said, "Actually, we own this house." But Karen just laughed, completely dismissing her. "Sure you do," she scoffed, like we were making it up. Her daughter rolled her eyes and started poking around near the pool chairs, like she was trying to claim her spot for a party she never got invited to. What made it worse was that a couple of their friends had shown up by then, just walked in through the gate they'd clearly propped open earlier. That's when I realized this wasn't some one-time mix-up. Karen and her daughter had planned this like it was their own private resort. They knew what they were doing. And now there were 5 or 6 teens walking around our backyard. Phones out, already taking selfies like they'd just booked a stay at a luxury Airbnb. Meanwhile, from across the fence, I noticed Mr. Thompson, our elderly neighbor, peeking through his blinds. He'd been quiet for months after a past run-in with Karen, and I could only imagine what he was thinking now. He'd warned me once that she had a history of pulling stunts like this, but this was bold, even for her. The question now wasn't just how far she'd go, but what would happen once she finally figured out who she was dealing with. And trust me, that moment was coming fast. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but inside, my patience was running thin. Karen's daughter had now taken off her sandals and dipped her feet into our pool like she'd paid for a weekend getaway. The other teens were making themselves comfortable too, some lounging on our chairs, one of them even going through the cooler we had set out. Karen just stood there, smug, acting like she ran the place. My wife gave me a look that said everything: confused, hurt, and honestly, just tired of the nonsense. Then Karen turned to me, hands on her hips, and asked, "Well, are you going? To make yourselves useful and bring out some towels?" That was it. I felt the tension rise in my chest. Not because of the insult, though that was bad enough, but because they were now completely disrespecting my wife, our home, and everything we'd worked hard for. And they still had no clue who I was. I glanced at the gate again and saw it swinging wide open. That's when I spotted another teen pulling up in a loud sports car, music blasting. The engine roared as he parked halfway on our lawn. Karen smiled like she'd just scored the final point in some twisted game. "The rest of the guests are here," she said, turning to her daughter. Meanwhile, our neighbor Mr. Thompson had stepped outside, phone in hand. I saw him glance at me, hesitating. He knew something was about to go down. He gave me the smallest nod, like he was silently asking, "You ready for this?" And I was. But I wanted to give them one last chance to fix their mistake. I stepped forward slowly, took off my sunglasses, and looked directly at Karen. Her smirk started to fade. I hadn't said a word yet, but something in my face must have told her the mood had shifted. The silence was thick. The pool party buzz quieted just enough. All eyes turned to me, waiting to see what I'd do next. Just as I was about to speak, ready to finally put Karen in her place, a voice came from behind me that froze the whole backyard. "There a problem here, Chief?" I turned to see Officer Daniels, one of my patrol guys, walking in through the still open gate. He was off duty too, in casual clothes, but the badge clipped on his belt was still visible. I hadn't called him. He lived just around the corner and had come by to return a borrowed tool. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, or more intense. Karen's face shifted instantly. She noticed the badge before she noticed the connection between us. "What's he doing here?" she snapped, her voice tightening with the first real sign of nerves. Her daughter stood up now, clearly confused. "Mom?" she whispered, unsure if they were in trouble or still in control. Daniels walked up, beside me, looked around at the teens sprawled across our yard and raised an eyebrow. "You hosting a pool party I didn't hear about?" I gave a slight shake of my head. "Nope. Apparently, we're just the hired help today." Karen tried to recover, putting on her fake, polite voice. "We were just trying to show the kids a good time. I assumed this was one of those shared community areas. My daughter said she heard that from someone." She smiled tightly, hoping charm would work. But now, I wasn't the only one watching her lie unravel. Then came the twist. One of the teens, still holding her phone, accidentally let her screen light up, and on it was a group chat. The title? Pool Takeover, Karen's Plan. My wife caught a glimpse and gasped. I leaned over and read it myself. It wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment misunderstanding. This had been organized, shared, and planned. Days in advance. The truth was out, but they still didn't know how deep they'd gone, or how far I was willing to go to protect what was ours. By the end of that week, the tension in the neighborhood was thick. People weren't just whispering anymore, they were demanding answers. A group of us, including Rick, Melissa, and Denise, decided to take action. We called for an emergency HOA meeting and made sure every homeowner knew about it. Word spread fast. That Saturday, the community center was packed, standing room only. Linda showed up late, looking rattled, still clutching that same old clipboard. But this time, no one was afraid to speak up. Denise stood first and laid out the evidence: fake amendments, missing vote records, and the shady fines that had never gone through proper channels. I followed with the lien paperwork, the warning letter, and the footage Melissa had captured of the mystery man with the clipboard. Then Melissa dropped the real bombshell. Her camera had caught a clear shot of the guy's face, and her cousin, who worked for the county, ran a background check. He wasn't a contractor or inspector, he was a debt collector, hired under the table. And he had no legal right to be on anyone's property. You could feel the mood shift instantly. Gasps, murmurs, phones coming out to take pictures of the documents. Even some of Linda's loyal supporters started backing away from her. When the police officer who'd warned me before walked in, off duty but clearly there to keep things civil, Linda froze. He handed a folder to the board's vice president and calmly said, "This is everything we've been documenting." Linda didn't say a word. She just stood there as the board read through the stack of complaints, legal findings, and recorded statements. Then, almost too quietly to hear, the vice president said, "Effective immediately, Linda is suspended pending investigation." Everyone in the room exhaled at once: relief, shock, satisfaction. But just as people started leaving, I got a text from an unknown number. It simply said, "You think she acted alone?" I looked around, heart pounding. The pool was gone. The warnings had stopped, but it seemed the story was far from over. Over the next few weeks, things finally started to settle down. The HOA board launched a full review of Linda's actions, and several of her decisions were reversed, including the false lien on my property. Homeowners who'd been quietly fined or threatened came forward with their own stories, and the board took real steps to fix the mess. Transparency meetings were scheduled. Voting rules were clarified. People finally started trusting the system, again, or at least paying attention to how it worked. As for Linda, she officially resigned before the investigation was completed. No apology, no explanation, just a typed letter handed in and a for sale sign on her lawn a few days later. Word was she moved out of town to avoid further legal trouble. And while that mystery text about her not acting alone still bugged me, nothing else ever came of it. Maybe it was a scare tactic. Maybe someone else was involved but backed off once things got public. Either way, it was quiet now. The lake pool was long gone, but what stuck with me wasn't the pool. It was the way people came together. What started as an HOA conflict turned into something bigger. Neighbors who barely said hello before were now checking in, watching out for each other. The fake authority, the threats, the shady warnings, they only worked because people were scared and silent. Once that changed, everything else did too. If there's one thing I took from all this, it's to know your rights and trust your instincts. Whether it's a simple home project or a fight with an HOA, standing your ground matters. And sometimes, just asking the right questions is all it takes to break the silence. Thanks for watching, and always, always read the fine print.